for taking the time to speak to us today. So before I go into your to the sort of vets and tech and the questions, I just wanted to find out a bit more background around yourself. So you were in the Royal Signals, I believe.
Yeah, so I joined the army back in 1998 at the ripe old age of 17. Spent 11 years in the Signals, the last 4 of that being a Phase 2 instructor in Blandford in Dorset, before transferring across to the Royal Logistic Corps as an army photographer in 2009, where I spent the next 12 years of my career up until retirement. Yeah.
Perfect. So the idea behind Parallel and the Vets and Tech campaign is really to bridge that gap between employers in the IT sector and the skill set that military veterans provide. Myself, mainly, obviously leaving the army relatively young, noticed a huge gap in support for military veterans, especially in the tech industry. The tech industry is mainly for people with university degrees and also people who transition straight from a civilian life, where the military, especially in the cyber defense sector, veterans can really lend their experience to that. So I prepared a few questions to go through just to obviously support veterans and give them advice when getting into the workplace. So the first question I had for you, Steve, was what was the biggest obstacle you faced when leaving the military?
Crikey, there were probably quite a few. What was the biggest? I'd probably say it was deciding what I wanted to do. Obviously, I'd had several different and varying postings, different roles, different environments. But I think the hardest part is trying to put that into context as to what that means in Civvy Street and what kind of appetite you've got for which sector, what role, trying to put your skill set into CV speak to see how that kind of matches up against the counterparts of the industry that you want to go into. So I think, for me, it was I suppose the hardest part was trying to understand where my place was in Civvy Street.
Perfect. Yeah, you mentioned obviously CVs there. So I think whilst you taking vets and tech further, what we're looking to do is to give CV writing advice, because obviously IT guys who come from a university background will have that kind of embedded. When you're in the military, you don't really need a CV, you just need your fitness and obviously to be able to shoot a weapon system and clean a weapon system properly. So in terms of sort of moving on to the next question, how did you make yourself marketable for work sort of upon leaving the military, i.e. how did you learn how to write a CV, or did you sort of do that yourself?
So for me, my transition out of the military was probably the complete opposite to most people. So I had just about come to the end of my formal 22-year contract and was about to go into my 2 years of VENG. But for me, that meant, although it meant a guaranteed promotion because I was next on the board within that promotion year, what that also meant was moving back away from home and living back in the mess Monday to Friday, which wasn't really great. So what I did was I kind of started at the end point and worked my way back. So I spoke to my desk officer and said, look, if something comes up, I've done my pensionable service, can I have early release? They looked at my role, looked at my years served and all the other manning considerations and said yes. So that was great. So I had that confirmed and basically worked backwards. So the first thing I did was get my CV ready. Now, because I was applying for early release, I wouldn't actually get the full complement of resettlement that everybody else would be entitled to. So I put that to one side and it wasn't a consideration. So I didn't get to experience CV workshops, networking events and all the other things that the CTP lay on. So I was literally on my own working out and navigating how I'm going to do this. Fortunately for me, I've got a few friends who are ex-military, and I lent on them heavily to shape my CV from what I'd written, which was literally a military brain dump of where I'd been and what I'd done. And looking back on it now was, it was miles away from where it needed to be. So step by step, we got my CV ready. I started being quite prolific on LinkedIn just by doing simple things like liking, commenting, even just simple comments like "this is great" or "love this," because it generates that interaction, and you get a bit of traction from that. And I noticed that by doing certain things, my connections were going up. Then you've got the cliche open to work banner, which obviously sort of shouts from the rooftop, "This is me and I need a job." And just started speaking to friends. The networking thing is really the key. And it was through a friend spotting a job advert at the company I'm in now and saying, "Have a look at this." He says, "I know the guys that run the company. I'm not like matey enough to ring them and say, you need to give this guy a job."
Yeah.
But he says, "I know of them. They're pretty decent blokes." And away I went. So I put the job application in. At this point, I hadn't signed off. I had early release in my back pocket, but wanted to see how that played out. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the first role I applied for, they needed a fill within about a month, which early release wasn't quite that early, so that wasn't an option. But luckily, the hiring manager had worked with ex-military before, understood the value that they bring, and basically said, "Let me go and have a look on the org chart and see if there's anything else that would suit your skills, and I'll come back to you." And pretty much that's kind of where it went. I then accepted a job offer about a month or two later, and literally signed my contract. Gave notice to terminate, applied for early release, and everything all in kind of one hit, and away I went. But it has, it's been different, but it also brought its own challenges. But in the lead up to that, I was also testing my CV on jobs that I didn't really want, but wanted to see how far through the process I could get, and also use it as a bit of interview practice. So yeah, all in all, it hasn't panned out too badly. Just a little bit unconventional to the run of the mill resettlement process.
I think the LinkedIn part definitely plays into what I'm trying to push. Obviously, 10, 15 years ago, people would be applying for jobs on JobServe, JobSite, wherever else. But what we find is LinkedIn is the place to be. You're going to get majority of your sort of applications on LinkedIn and be able to network with the most important people on LinkedIn. So yeah, I completely agree with that. Liking stuff, commenting and stuff, getting your name out there. As you say, the open to work point where we source CVs for our clients. Our first point of call is the people who are open to work, because why are we going to call people who aren't looking for a job and necessarily maybe waste time? So in terms of what you think now, what could your military experience contribute to management within a company, or military veterans experience contribute to management within a company?
I think the benefits of hiring veterans is sort of multiple faceted. We've got a good grounding and good ethics, good morals, and a good desire to succeed that's kind of drilled into us from basic training, and I think it also gives us a very cool, calm, and level-headed approach to stressful situations that maybe our civilian counterparts aren't used to, because obviously the levels of pressure and duress that we are expected to perform under varies massively to what the coffee machine breaking means to a civvy. Do you know what I mean? And trust me, that is a real thing. So I think we've got great leadership training and leadership skills in us. Clearly, everybody's skill sets and abilities vary, but as a generic package, we've been molded to be to perform in a specific manner. The cool, calm, level-headed approach, working under stress, working to deadlines, being able to solutionize and fix problems, being reactive but also being proactive, to have that ability to look after a team as well as looking after yourself. It's not all about self, whereas I find in Civvy Street it is a lot about self rather than team. And we have a lot of good attributes that I think would be of benefit. Even just down to the basics of being smart, being punctual, being prepared. It's just that whole presence that kind of adds value, I think. I started in my role in a completely new organisation as the first incumbent in the post.
Yeah.
I was just told, I don't really know much of what I need you to do, but I just need you to go and do it. And having that maturity and that level of trust to take a problem, own it, and only really need to stick your head above the parapet if something's about to go catastrophically wrong. But otherwise, we just crack on, don't we?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think a big part of my experience of the army is the army's there to solve problems. The army's never brought into a place because everything's going well. Most of the time, the army's brought in because there's an issue. And I think employers at the moment, a lot of roles within IT are probably most of the time firefighting. Coming in, maybe someone's installed an IT application wrong, or there's an issue that needs solving. And what our military veterans can really do is they've got experience of coming in and just getting it done. IT projects cost a lot of money, and the longer they go on, the more money it costs. Military veterans are there to get things done in a time frame, and it's complete. I was going
to say for us, change is the normal. Whereas in the civilian environment, especially with long-standing corporate organisations, change doesn't necessarily happen that often.
No.
And I think the other benefit for us is because we've been used to moving every 18 months to 3 years, posting by posting, you are used to riding that change roller coaster of not only emotion but role, expectations, outputs, and all that other good stuff. That really, if someone drops a big hot potato on your desk, you don't really flap as much as others might do.
No, I completely agree. And sort of moving on to now, sort of customers and clients and people who could be necessarily hiring military veterans. How do you think the recruitment process could be a bit more veteran friendly or a bit more accessible for military veterans from your experience?
The few things that I've tried to get my organisation to do is tap into the larger organisations that are dealing with the resettlement process, because generally they are the first person that a soldier, sailor or airman speaks to when they say, I want to leave the military. Yeah. People like the Career Transition Partnership have a free jobs board. I'm not sure what all of the others do, but there are several other organisations. I think one of them is BFRS, British Forces Resettlement Service, something like that.
Yeah.
There are a few of them that go around and they hit all the major garrison towns. They do kind of quarterly job fairs and all this kind of stuff. They send out newsletters and keep people up to date. The first place that some of the more naive of people will look is there, because that's the platform that their chain of command have told them that they have to use as part of their leaving process. But also what I've tried to put in place here is that if we receive a CV through our website or through a referral that notes anything in it that's got a military history to it, that they come and grab one of the veterans from the company, of which here we've got about a dozen at the moment, which is quite nice. Because then if we do get someone who's quite young, quite inexperienced, and hasn't had the exposure to writing a CV properly, then at least we can try and translate what's been said into what that means in this environment that would help the recruitment team and the hiring manager understand what that skill set would mean to them. So there's a few options, and I think just being there to help and push those platforms. LinkedIn for me has been absolutely phenomenal. And the veteran network on there is pretty key. So again, if large recruitment organizations can get into some of those veteran network groups, that will also help drive the recruitment machine and actually sort of flag we're a veteran friendly employer, and that will attract a candidate or two.
Yeah, I think the CV thing is huge, because having like you said, a military veteran or someone who has an affinity with that kind of area and to look at CVs that might be written in a slightly different style to what tech people are used to, definitely lends weight because they could miss out on some really sort of great guys. And then how do you think we could sort of create a supportive culture to help veterans develop and progress? What kind of culture do you think employers should necessarily provide?
Do you know what? I'm not really sure. I think this country as a whole has got a long way to go to show a good level of veteran support. I think a lot of what we do as a country is lip service. Don't get me wrong. I don't think we should go full American, because that does sort of, sit on the fence of being a little bit, maybe a little bit over the top. Whilst I fully applaud their their loyalty to their forces, and I suppose somewhere in between. But I think the biggest thing for a civilian organisation to understand is the challenges that people may face when they step out to their first role, and how it may impact them, and how it might just be like a complete rabbit in the headlights. And as a decent organisation and decent line manager, they would need to be aware of that. But then realistically, they shouldn't need to treat you any differently to anybody else. But how we would roll that out as a way forward for organisations in general, I think is probably quite a tricky question.
I agree. I think for me, like you hit the nail on the head, actually not treating people differently in some ways is probably better. I've seen people in work come in and they've been highlighted as a military veteran. And in some ways that can make people feel awkward. I think acknowledging that service is a great thing to do. Parallel has acknowledged my service in the past. But I also think sort of singling people out as well. They like you said, in America, they have a great support system for their veterans. It's something I think the UK could aspire to. But meeting that middle ground as well, it is something that's important.
I mean, the forces covenant is probably not a bad start, because a bit like veteran friendly GP surgeries that you can find now via the NHS website. Some people will go and look for who are veteran friendly employers, because let's face it, if you go to a CTP event, some of the big hitters will be there. So Barclays and Vodafone, BAE Systems, Babcock, Lockheed Martin, they're there, and that's great. But what's local to that individual who doesn't have a Babcock or a BAE nearby? There might be some little company tucked away somewhere on an industrial estate that you've driven past every day of your adult life, but not actually know what they do, who they are, and the fact that they may be a gold member of the covenant scheme. So that could also help people massively.
Yeah, I think the Armed Forces Covenant is not marketed enough at all. The only reason I know about the Armed Forces Covenant is being a reservist and being in the military. I've never walked into an employer and it even been mentioned in conversation. It's something that benefits the employer, but also the reservist or that veteran. So just coming on to sort of what we could do in our search processes to endeavour to hire more veterans. Is there ways that you think when recruiters like myself or employers themselves can sort of specifically target veterans in their search? So how do you think we could do that?
So I think, as I mentioned earlier, my first two thoughts would be the people that lead the resettlement process. So your career transition partnership, they have currently got the MOD contract for the tri-service, and outside of that, it would, in my eyes, definitely be the LinkedIn arena. That's at the moment where I've certainly shared jobs that I've heard about where I know they're specifically looking for veterans, and I've shared it in specific military networks on LinkedIn. And I think that's probably in this current climate the kind of go-to search engine. That's where people will get their network building from, but also get their, kind of job referrals and stuff as well. And it's generically free.
Perfect. Yeah, I completely agree. I think LinkedIn's been mentioned a lot through this conversation. It is the easiest tool in the world to use. In my opinion, the Army maybe should do LinkedIn training lessons to some military leavers. It's a huge tool. It's free. For instance, in my network, I have 11,000 connections. My biggest part of my job is LinkedIn. And I think utilising that for me now is obviously spread awareness around the military and tech campaign is what we're going to do. And I think I've noticed actually on LinkedIn now, when we have LinkedIn Recruiter, which is basically a paid search engine for us, there's an option now to select yes on military veterans. And I think spreading awareness, LinkedIn spreading awareness of that would be quite a big thing. And then how could we inspire and prepare veterans for civilian employment, i.e. sort of management, training, policies and stuff like that?
Wow. It probably all boils down to preparation. Again, if you've got an understanding, so for example, if you were the regimental sergeant major, within your job description, it's all written very military, about you're in charge of the sergeant's mess and the this, the that, the other. But if you then flip that into complete civvy speak, what does it actually mean? What do those skill sets attribute your role to, and kind of where do you then pitch yourself against your civilian counterparts? Because a big thing for me when I left was that I'd spent my whole military career climbing a ladder, that I didn't want to take a massive nosedive and start at the bottom, all because somebody tells me that I've got no corporate experience. Now, I have heard that in the past, and I have known people that have kind of fallen foul of that. But I didn't want to do that. So I was then looking at what I'd done and what qualifications I'd gained, what that meant in Civvy Street, what that meant to a certain pay grade or role or environment. And obviously, they fluctuate. They fluctuate massively between organisation as to what they think the same role would pay. And I then just started to target certain salary brackets, and kind of push it from that aspect, but without an understanding of what I could go for and what I was able, what I was trained and able to accomplish. You need to find that out very quickly. So you've almost got to look at your CV with a completely different set of eyes, or indeed give it to someone else and just get them to red pen it, shred the whole thing, because the CV that you need to get you a job will definitely not be the CV that you've started, as I mentioned about mine earlier. Yeah. And it's just then a massive learning curve of how the big bad world of being a civvy works, and the language is all different, the expectations are different, it's all changed, but preparation is the key. And without wanting to chuck a cliche or two in there, if you fail to prepare, then you're preparing to fail. So it's planning, it's attacking it full throttle, and almost treating it as like another planning exercise of, I've got to move quarter, I've got to move job, I've got to get a new unit flash and a new beret from the clothing store before I leave, I've got to pack my boxes, book my visas, whatever. Sort of methodically plan it, and then just start getting used to having to choose what clothes you wear every day, which is a little bit weird.
I think for some of the younger elementary leavers, it's I left the Army quite young. I know people who left quite young, and our plans were never to be on Civvy Street at the age of 24, 25 or whatever else. And these guys are kind of halfway through a career in the Army where, like you say, you are prepared to move quarter, move holding area, whatever else, and then suddenly you find yourself on Civvy Street. And what I think was missing for me was that CV writing. I fell into a sales role quite young, selling car parking spaces and whatever else just to make ends meet, without that support. And then sort of coming on to the last question, Why do you think ex-veterans in tech could be a good idea, and what transferable skills are there for our tech customers?
Wow. I think it's a great idea, and again, skill sets vary massively, but I think the one key attribute that probably pays dividends to all sectors is our adaptability. As I alluded to, we're used to moving postings every 18 months to 3 years or what have you. You have to then effectively learn a new job every time. Same with promotion, you get a slightly bigger set of keys, a bit more responsibility. You've got to learn how to adapt, and we generally do that very quickly. The same as all our military courses. We don't have 6-8 months to learn what a civvy would learn, or in the time frame we've got 2-3 weeks. So we're used to that adaptability. We're used to working under pressure. I think if there are people that want to get into tech that don't necessarily have the right skill set now, obviously go back to the planning process, use your enhanced learning credits, use your resettlement grants, get a few of the minimum entry requirements to just get you a face at the door. And then if you've got a couple of enhanced learning credits in the bank, you could always use that as a bit of a sales pitch to say, look, I've done level 1 of whatever you've asked me to do, but I've got a couple of things in the bank if you want me to do level 2 or level 3, or indeed if there are employers that upfront offer to to have a training budget in place to upskill people that have got the right aptitude and attitude towards the environment and the learning, that they'll then take on that journey, invest a bit of time in them, and give them the training and the skills that they need. So I suppose there's sort of two parts there where a bit of that is on the employer, showing this is my stall front, this is what I'm prepared to do, but then the employee or potential employee as to what they can do just to get themselves in the best possible position to just get through sometimes what can be a very robotic process to actually speak to a human, and then have the opportunity to sell yourself to progress in that application. So
I completely agree. And that's it from me today. And I just wanted to say thank you for obviously supporting the Vets in Tech campaign.
You're welcome.
It's not nice to speak to other veterans. I think what's important about this campaign is not speaking to corporate people necessarily, but speaking to people who've actually done it. It was unfortunately for yourself and myself and others, we've had to go through the less, say, accessible route into employment, and what myself and others are looking to do is to change that and make it more accessible. We'll leave it there for today, Steve. Thanks so much for your time.
You're welcome.
And we'll look to pick on your knowledge in the future and really push on from there. I'll hang up the call now, but thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. And like I say, if you need any more help, give me a shout. And if there's anyone who watches this who wants to reach out and just ask questions, there's no such thing as a stupid question. And at some point, everyone's got to go through the same journey. It's just how you navigate your way. So if there's anyone on LinkedIn that wants to connect and get any help, then feel free.
Appreciate it. Take care, Steve. Have a good weekend.